Have you ever wondered why people get so angry at an online video game? They can be perfectly reasonable people in their personal and professional lives, but when they jump onto a video game, such as one like Pokemon Unite, they just rage and they trash talk. And some of you might be thinking, hey, that kind of describes me. And to be frank, it actually describes the majority of people who play online games. Now, I want to get to the crux of this issue and understand why it happens, and we need to consider some questions first. One, why do people get so angry when they play games, both online and offline, such as a casual game of touch football? Secondly, why do we think that we're better than everyone else when we're playing these games? And thirdly, how do we stop ourselves from getting this angry? Because ultimately, being level headed will increase your performance. Firstly, let's start off with why do we get so angry when we're gaming? Let's consider the following chart here. In social psychology, this is known as the general aggression model, or GAM for short, and it's a comprehensive framework for understanding human aggression. Let's walk through an example of how Pokemon Unite could make us very angry and how this model explains our human aggression. Firstly, depending on your natural tendencies to display aggressive behavior, such as your genetics and your upbringing, you will respond differently when faced with an emotional situation. Of course, the situation itself will have an influence on your response to a game. Unfortunately, you are who you are, so let's focus on the situation. Let's say you've won your bottom lane in Pokemon Unite and your team has lost the top lane. The enemies come down to push your lane, meaning all your hard work is wasted. You've lost the bottom lane. This is frustrating, and it's a situation I'm sure many of us have been in. What happens at this stage is your personal internal state is affected. Your cognitions, that is, your thoughts, will change. You start to think, wow, my team really sucks. Your affect is influenced, that is, your emotions, your feelings. You start to feel angry. That blood pressure starts to raise and your internal body temperature will start to increase. Your arousal is influenced, that is, your heart rate will start to increase, your palms start to sweat, and your emotional state is heightened. In this state, you're more likely to jump in the in-game mic and give your teammates some feedback. So, a situation has arisen and you're angrier than you were before. This is normal. This is a normal response. However, what separates the top athletes from the college superstars is your output from this state of internal being now. You appraise the situation. You decide how to respond. What we really need to avoid is making the assumption that, let's say, the person in their top lane lost due to their personal own traits. For example, your thinking might be they lost because they suck or they lost because they played risky and they inted. And this is often the outcome in Pokemon Unite. Refer back to the top of our diagram. There is a personal and there is a situational factor. We need to stop assuming that the personal factor is what made people misplay. The better response, the better output is the enemy must have just played well and the enemy must have supported each other a little better and they were probably put in a tough situation in the top lane. Maybe the enemy jungler went up and did a good job. They were in a tough situation rather than they just suck. The reason we don't do this more often is because we simply don't have the processing time to think during the game. So naturally we converge to the simplest explanation, which is attributing it to a person's personal trait. This is a fundamental attribution error, which is they suck, I'm better, they're throwing the game. Why does this happen to me every single game in every lobby? The enemy's always better, blah, blah, blah. That is the general rigmarole. This model probably contextualizes to Pokemon Unite a little better. The characteristics of a particular video game will amplify the likelihood and the levels of anger displayed. The type of violence in the game, which in Pokemon Unite is killing the enemy, and the competitiveness of that game, which in Pokemon Unite it's a highly competitive game, these characteristics will amplify the levels of anger. The difficulty, and Pokemon Unite is a super complex game, and the pace of action, Pokemon Unite is one of the fastest paced games I've ever played. These are characteristics that influence the situation. This explains why you get more angry playing Pokemon Unite rather than a game like Animal Crossing. There are also factors such as your disinhibition and your anonymity towards video gaming in general, which explains our lack of face-to-face accountability, and this leads to an increase in your online aggressive behavior, but that is an entire video in itself. So the question is, why do we get so angry? Well, it's because these situations arise and these characteristics of the situations affect our internal state. we tend to then display our aggressive behavior and label them onto our teammates, specifically blaming their own personal ability to play the game rather than thinking about the situation, the tricky situation that your teammate would have been faced by the opponent. Now, why is it that we think that we're so much better than everyone else at this game? A few days ago, I put out a poll which asked, do you think that you're better than the majority of people who play solo queue and duo queue in Pokemon Unite? 70% of people said, yeah, I am. Now, by nature, 70% of people can't be better than the majority. The math simply does not math. Now, there is a case for saying the majority didn't respond, so therefore the results are skewed. That's fair, however, it's not really likely because my audience is generally inexperienced at the game. So let's backpedal. 70% of people think that they're better. This is clearly an issue. This is clearly a big issue. This is a phenomena where people overestimate their own skills and underestimate other people's skills. This directly leads to frustration when others aren't meeting your skewed version of your own abilities. This is a cognitive bias known as illusory superiority. I've heard people call this the Dunning-Kruger effect, which in my opinion, it's not exactly correct because I think people are actually more experienced than we think, and they're still making these same judgments. So the Dunning-Kruger effect will say, you know, if you're new, then you think you're absolutely awesome, but the more experience you get, you kind of drop off in this confidence in kind of like a parabolic shape. However, I don't really think that's true because I think there's a lot of people who are actually mid-experienced or they've got quite a lot of experience. However, they're still overestimating their skills. So the illusory superiority I was talking about previously is a studied concept that I think better maps our issue in Pokemon Unite. People are overestimating their skills and they're underestimating other people's skills. This is well studied in the context of driving. Significantly more people think they're better at driving and they're more safe drivers than the median population driver. This math doesn't math. It's a cognitive bias. It's an illusion of the self, and it skews our idea of how good we really think that we are. So what's the advice? Be humble, respect your teammates, and also respect your opponent's skills because they probably think they're better than you as well. Understand that situations happen in the game and that it doesn't discount the skills of your teammates. This is damaging your own cognitive bias to repeatedly think that this is true. Lastly, I'm going to talk about why you shouldn't be tilting and why it's decreasing your ability to play the game better. Have you ever seen LeBron James venting in a Discord comment server about his teammates? I've never seen Rafael Nadal post a toxic tweet about his opponents or his team. And finally, I'm yet to see the likes of Overlord, Phil Umis, or even Inda vent about their team in a toxic way. So naturally, it stems, is this a quality of top players that you should be mimicking to improve your own performance? I'd say yes, but how do we also tilt less? Firstly, the tilting occurs in the outcome stage of this general aggression model. The outcome stage is amplified by your internal state, so we need to reverse engineer this. Calm your internal state. Be aware of when you're getting angry. Slow down your breathing, slow down your thinking, take some depressants, right? Try to control your internal emotions before you output anything. At this output stage, consider the situation that might have led to your team being in a losing position rather than just their own skills or their own personal ability, their personal decisions. There are situations that would have skewed this, so don't just contribute to your own bias. Make your output positive, make it understanding, or just slow down your output. As for your own self, your own biological markers that affect your internal state of anger, well, this is something for you to work on. Nobody else can do this for you. It's not weak to speak. So if you genuinely think you're displacing your anger from somewhere else onto a video game or onto a Discord venting server, then maybe it's time to think, hey, this is something I want to actively work on to improve. Anyway, I hope you found this video useful. If you made it this far, give the video a like, share it with your angriest friend, and let them know that there are benefits of playing less tilted in Pokemon Unite or any game in general. If you want to learn more about Pokemon Unite, here's a video that I'm putting up on the screen right now that explains it. It's a beginner's guide. The game is super fun, it's super addicting, and I'd strongly recommend. Anyway, have a good day, everyone.